Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Suchita Jain and we are going to cover the second chapter for the 10 words literature, that is Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. Okay, so let's start with, I would like to tell you the political system apartheid. Apartheid was a political system that separated people according to their race. So previously there was race system that prevailed in India also, if you could remember at the time. So the classes, the people were divided into classes according to their races, like SC, ST, OBC, general. The means the white people were over there, so the British people over there. So they divided every people, all the people, in the form of races. So can you name me the country in which this political system was used recently? Well, the answer is South Africa. Okay. Now, this chapter is all about Nelson Mandela. Who was Nelson Mandela? Nelson Mandela was an African, he was a member of the African National Congress, and he spent his lifetime fighting against apartheid, the race system. So, he had spent 30 years in prison. Okay, finally, democratic elections were held in South Africa in 1994, where Nelson Mandela became the first black president of a new nation, right? So, in this extract, we are going to study about the autobiography written by Nelson Mandela himself. So, what he all spoke in this particular biography, let's study about this, what Nelson Mandela talked about in his autobiography, right? Yeah, I would like you to mark all the highlights that I'm doing all together along with me so that in case of your exams, finally you can just brush up all these highlighted things and you can summarize the entire lesson for today and you are all good to go for your boards, right? So in this extract, we are going to do the autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Mandela speaks about a historic occasion, the inauguration. Can you guess what the occasion might be? So check out what the occasion was. So let's start what exactly is written in the autobiography. I'll give you the brief highlights and I will give you a very short summary that you can understand easily, right? Okay, so let's start. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the first few days, I had been pleasantly beside by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So, what happened? On 10th May, there was a big inauguration ceremony, as we discussed before also. So, on that day, there were lots of big people, the dignitaries, the world leaders were over there who gathered in this gathering. Okay. And it was, means Nelson Mandela was all surrounded by these types of people. So, what was this occasions? Let's see. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So here, a new government was about to form. So in this amphitheater is a building where the roof is not there. It's an open place and there are seats one by one, one by one. You might have seen the playgrounds in cricket team. So it's just like that. That is called the amphitheater that has no roof and there are seats one by one, means in the form of a staircase. So that ceremony was in the big amphitheater where lots of crowd gathered over there and different race people were gathering over there. And what was the occasion? It was the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. Means the without the racism, the first government was about to form on this day, that is 10th May. So again, highlight this point which I'm telling it to you. Okay. Now let's move further. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zinani on the podium. Mr. Dr. De Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then, so this is the photo of Nelson Mandela. Then Thabo Mageki was sworn in as first deputy president when it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people, to the assembled guests and the watching world. So Nelson Mandela. So there was a there was a ceremony when people were accompanied by the means they were all having the elections and they were selected as for the different posts. So the first post means Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zinani, and they were the first post that was designated was Mr. De Klerk, and he was sworn up as the second deputy president. Then the first deputy president was sworn, and his name was Thabako Mbeki. Okay. Then it was the turn of Mr. Nelson Mandela. So, according to the constitution, he had to take the pledge when he was given the title of President of South Africa. So, he pledged, and what he said for his pledge. Just listen to that. I will explain you later on. Today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long must be born a society which all humanity will be proud. So this was the pledge he took, that after this strong struggle that we fought being an SC/ST, now it's the time to get liberated. It's time to get independence from everything. And it's my duty from now on that I will remove this racism from our country, and I will treat every human being as a common person, every human being liberated, that he should enjoy his freedom without any kind of interference from anybody. Everybody could live free with freedom. That has also happened in India, if you could remember. Now we have our own constitution. We are united. We have our own freedom to express ourselves, to live in our own forms. Nobody can interfere in anybody's life. So that is what the Nelson Mandela's pledge was when his country got united. So confer. Here he conferred that he will bring liberty and he will bring freedom to all the people in his own country. Now, today all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. So he is going to make a society on which everybody will be proud of, where every human being will be considered as a human. They will be given all sorts of right and freedom. We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world or our own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. So he thanked all the dignitaries over here that after this long struggle for being a human being, our country has got with this freedom, and we have libertized our soil. And we thank everybody who has joined this particular ceremony, and they were international dignitaries. So he thanked all of them, and we want to enjoy with all of you this common victory of justice, for peace, and the human dignity, where the human will be living their dignified life. Okay. Because of this policy of apartheid, many countries are earlier broken off diplomatic relations with South Africa. Because of this racism and communalism, many countries were not talking terms with the people of Africa. They just treated them as like nobody. They treated them very inhumanly, right? So we have at last achieved a political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. So in his pledge, he made it a point, he highlighted that point, that freedom will be given to every citizen of South Africa without any kind of restrictions, and they will be given the privilege, they will remove the bondage of poverty, and now onwards nobody will be deprived of their rightful benefits. They will be given all sorts of benefits as a human being, as a citizen of South Africa. There will be no more sufferings, no more poverty, gender biasness would not be there, and no discrimination of the races would be there. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. Means nobody would be seized by anybody, nobody would be dominating anybody, and nobody will be treated indifferently and unfavorably, right? This was the plan that Nelson Mandela took on the day when he was uh, given the privilege to be the president of South Africa. The sun shall never set on on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. Freedom to everybody, every citizen of Africa, and God bless, and sunshine always bright on Africa. That was the pledge that Nelson Mandela took. So heads off to Mr. Nelson Mandela that he worked so hard for the freedom of the people of his own country. So now let's start again. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. So now he was given that privilege. There were helicopters and troops and big means flights over there. The military forces, they were giving him salutation for becoming the president of South Africa. So this this scene was like it gave the democracy a new government to that particular country, to South Africa. And now that country is free and fairly elected people are over there to take all the necessary decisions for that country. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defense Force and police, their chests beckoned with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. So he was remembering those days when these people, these military force people, those police people were having the medals on their chest and ribbons with all those big medals which they won for achieving something good in the military life. So now they were saluting Nelson Mandela as a president. So he was very awful, very happy to look at that, who were previously arresting him because of that racism. And today they are all saluting him. So his heart was full of, I must say, proud. He was very proud on today's day. And he was all conscious and aware of, he could remember those days where he was imprisoned, where he was thrown behind the bars, where he was brutally kicked by these policemen, and now they are just saluting him. So now he could see the flag that was just flying off on that South African freedom country, that South African flag that was in V shape, and the trail that was made by that helicopter in the form of black, red, green, and blue, and gold color, those smoke lines was coming as a shape of a flag. Okay. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthem and the vision of white singing Nkosi Sikkle, I Africa and black singing Dice Stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although the day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words of heart. So there were two anthems now played as soon as the flag was hoisted up above on that helicopter in the form of that V tricolor, or four or five colors were there in that flag. So the two national anthems played side by side, and the name was Nkosi Sikkle, I Africa. One of the blacks was singing that song, and Dice Stem was another, means white was singing Nkosi Sikkle, and the black people were singing their Dice Stem. So these two lyrics were rhyming over there in that amphitheater. And he was very proud to see all this. And it was a great moment and a great achievement for South Africa. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth, the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of national domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century, and my own 8th decade as a man, that system. So after on that day of inauguration, he was going into history, the day where he could feel when he was born, and the white-skinned people, how they used to dominate them, how they used to dominate these dark-skinned people, means the racism was there. and they were treated very harshly and very inhumanly. And it was very pathetic kind of behavior that they used to do with these people. So he could remember on the when he was taking that oath, he could remember those days when there was so much struggle and when they were treated very badly. So, and my own 8 decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of the color of their skin. So I want this country to be like, it should not like that was in the history. It should be that every person should have their own right and they should enjoy their freedom, regardless of the color of the skin and regardless of any kind of poverty or any kind of differences between the people. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I had on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifice had wrought. So he remembered those sacrifices of those people, those freedom fighters who fought for the liberty of South America, the liberation of South Africa, sorry, the liberation of South Africa. So he was remembering those patriots and he was giving his patriotism for these people because it was because of their long and hard work, their dedication to get their country liberated. So he's giving hearty thanks to them and he was thinking it inside that it is because of their hard work and the sacrifice that they did and they sacrificed their lives for the freedom of South Africa. So he's rendering his thanks that thank you so much that today I can see a liberty and a unique South Africa, an independent South Africa. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from the profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sissolas, the Chief Lulitas, and Yusuf Dadus, the Frame Fishers, the Robert Sobus of our time, men of such extraordinary. So these were the people who did the freedom fighting. They were the freedom fighters who fought for South Africa and sacrificed their life for the freedom of South Africa. So he was rendering his hearty thanks, his hearty homage to all these people for working day in and night to get the South Africa liberated. And it is because of their courage and wisdom and generosity that they have achieved the freedom, the independence today. And he wanted that they might be alive so that he can render his homage to them in front of them. Perhaps it requires such depths of operation to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil. You should highlight these points, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. Although South Africa is very rich, we all know that it is very rich in minerals and gems, and it is rich in oil also, crude oil that comes deep beneath from the soils. So although the South Africa is wealthy in all these things, in diamonds also it is very wealthy. But he said, out of these wealth, these treasures, his people, his country is the most important precious pearl in this whole, whatever the treasures are, his people are the biggest treasure for him out of all these treasures. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I've seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I've seen men stand up to attack and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does. You should underline this point. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. You know, what was so common in these freedom fighters? They struggled very hard. They had the courage to struggle. They risked their life. They, both men and women were there who risked their life for the freedom of this country. So they showed their strength, their ability to bear this hardship and recover from its effects. Now they were not afraid. The brave men, they are the people who are not afraid. They are the people who conquer their fear. This is a very important point, and you should highlight this. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. The brave men are not born. They are the people who conquer their fear and become brave. They have that courage to fight against the hardships and the effects of it. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion, but people must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than is supposed. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me, keep me going. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So he realized that those white skinned people, they were born with hatred. They used to spread hatred over there. And because their hearts were full of hatred, their hearts were full of brutality, so they used to do it on the people, the black skinned people. They used to do that hateless. They used to kick them brutally. They used to imprison them. So he said, if they could be means they could learn the feeling of hatred, then they could also be taught the feeling of love. So every person has a heart, and there is some kind of love in that heart and hatred also. So he was waiting to create that love in the hearts of those people who are very harsh and very hard-hearted. So he was waiting for that day to create the love in those people. So he saw that glimpse, that small light in one of the person who was imprisoning them. One of the guards was present in the prison. So he saw a little bit of humanity in that person, and that gave him a light that yes, love can be grown up, the seeds of the love can be feeded up into their hearts. So this is very important line again. Man's God goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. So when they were pushed to the ability, they were pushed so hard that your means ability to bear that pain overwhelms your extraordinary limit of bearing the pain. Even they were tortured beyond that limit of pain. So he could remember those days, but still he had that faith, that light in his heart that yes, they could be taught how to love. So with that light, he kept on working hard, kept on struggling, kept on freedom fighting for his own country. In life, every man has twin obligations: obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife and children. And he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country in a civil and human society. Each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of these obligations. Every person in this world want to have family. They want to love their parents. They want to love their wife, their children. They want to live with them. They want to have a means full-fledged life, a happy life with their family and friends. Everybody has this inclination, this love towards their family. And this is the behavior of each and every person. But what he realized in South Africa, this was also not possible. You cannot love your family, you cannot love your near and dear ones. Now, what happened? But in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth, the man of who are in his own race, the man of his color, they could not fulfill all these dreams which every person desires. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a two-light existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, as a brother and father and a husband. So he saw that the people of his own race, they cannot make their own family, they cannot take care of their family, they are avoided to have the feelings for their family. If they had some feelings and they means love their family, they took care of their family, they were taken off and threw off in a separate place from their family. They were given a secret place, they were separated from their family, you can say in simple words, and they cannot take care of their family. And he found this very bad because once for all, you are living for your family. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free, free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut. Free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village. Free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow-moving goods. As long as I obeyed my father and abided by the customs of my tribe, I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. Now he was going into the back days when he was born. What happened to their community means, as long as they used to follow that racism, the ignorance towards their family and friends, and the rules, the hard rules that was laid by the white people, as long as they used to follow them, means as long as they were slave of those white people, nobody used to trouble them. But he was feeling very bad. And this line, please remember, it is very important. I was not born with a hunger to be free. I was born free and free in every way that I could know. Means no person in this world is born to be a slave. Everybody is free to live according to themselves. Everybody is free from the court of law. Everybody has the freedom to live according to themselves. So he realized this thing. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me. I wanted freedom, that I began to hunger for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself, the transitory freedoms of being able to stay out at night, read what I pleased, and go where I chose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, I yearned for the basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. So now, as he grew bigger and bigger, he thought, I should have freedom. And he thought that I'm living in a world of illusion where everything is free. We are free. We are living in a freedom. We are living with full freedom. We have full right to live our lives. But then he slowly and gradually realized, as he was growing bigger, younger, you can say. So he realized he wanted the freedom for himself. He wanted to read. He wanted to go wherever he wanted to go. But slowly and gradually he realized that that freedom was all myth. Was all myth. Myth means it was something that was appearing real, but it was not real. So it was an illusion. So it was not permanent also. That freedom was not permanent. Nobody is allowed to marry. Nobody is allowed to keep family. Everybody has to follow the law which was laid by those white skinned people. So he was slowly and gradually realizing this. So what happened to him next? But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were also not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like me did. That is when I joined the African National Congress, and that is when the hunger for my own freedom became the greater hunger for the freedom of the people. So slowly and gradually, when he realized that neither he nor his brothers and sister nor his family is free to take their own decisions, to live their life according to themselves. So what he felt, now I have to work for my country and for the freedom of my people, of my own race. So what he did, he joined the African National Congress, and the hunger to fight for that freedom grew more and more in him. So these were the days that changed his life, his personality totally. And now see, you could see he's raising his hand when he was the president of South Africa. That was the day when he conquered the whatever he was imagining right from the childhood, to become free and make his nation and his country and his people proud of him, and liberalize each and every person in his country. Okay, so he was working hard for the freedom of his people. So he joined the South African National Congress. It was this desire for the freedom of my people to live their lives with dignity and self-respect that animated my life. Now his life, he has made the goals of his life that he should liberate each and every, he should work hard for the freedom of his people, so that they can live their lives with the self-respect and dignity that each and every person in this world deserves. So he made the goals of his life that he has to liberate his country and his people. That transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. He was a very shy and a very frightened kind of person. Now he has become a bold person. That drove a law-abiding eternity to become a criminal. Now he was following the rules and regulations. At first, he was a lawful kind of person who used to follow the rules and regulations that was laid down by the government. Now, what forced him to become a criminal? This desire to get the freedom for his country and people. That turned a family-loving husband into a man without a home. That forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. So he left his family also. He left his wife. He sacrificed his life totally for the freedom struggle of his country. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man. But I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. So he said, I can't do anything. I don't want the freedom for myself. I find myself behind the bars. I find myself imprisoned. If my people are not liberalized, my people are not free, even I don't feel that freedom within me. Unless and until I will not liberate them, I will also feel as if I am in the bars. Freedom is indivisible. The claims on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. Means he said, if the people are in chains, the people are imprisoned, if the people are not treated well, they are ignored, they are being pushed, they are panicking, they are struggling for their freedom. So even I will not enjoy that freedom if I am having it. So I want to liberate them. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. If somebody is oppressing somebody, both of them should be liberated because both of them are behind the bars. If a man who takes away another's freedom is a prisoner of hatred, the person who is imprisoning the other person, he is himself imprisoned in the feeling of hatred. He's locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. That person himself is a narrow-minded and a very, I should say, he's not liked by any of the person without any reason. He used to have hatred for others. He's brutalizing other people. He's taking others' liberty. So he said the oppressed and the oppressor both should be freedomized from their thought, from their feeling of hatred. And once the oppressor is libertized from that hatred feeling, the oppressed person will automatically be freed. Means the oppressor, if the oppressor is free of his means this boggled up mind, the oppressed person will automatically get freedom. I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I'm not free when my freedom is taken from me. If my freedom is taken away from me, I'm behind the bars. I feel like so. If I'm taking away any other's freedom, I will feel the same thing that they are also not free. If I am being imprisoned, I am not feeling free. So if other people are also having those problems, I will not feel free for myself. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. Means the oppressor and the oppressed both are going away from humanity. So both should be libertized, both should have the feeling of love. Then only this feeling of independence and freedom could prevail. If the oppressor is human, the oppressed will also be enjoying his freedom and liberty. If the oppressor is inhuman, the oppressed and I must say the oppressed person and the oppressor, both are in some kind of chains. The oppressor will be in the chain of hatred, and the oppressed person is automatically feeling bad regarding this, right? So, thank you so much.